Hi, I'm Brian Levy. I'm the Chief Relationship Officer at Manchester Living and the host of the Manchester Living podcast. The purpose of the podcast is to help people navigate the complex maze of elder care. There is a lexicon of elder care terms on the website at manchesterlivingpodcast.com. Today's episode is a conversation about living with neurodegenerative diagnoses. A neurodegenerative diagnosis is a diagnosis of a condition that causes the progressive loss of neurons in the brain and spinal cord. These diseases are incurable and can affect movement, mental functioning, and other abilities. Examples include Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, and Parkinson's, to name a few. Before we get started, I want to roll this quick clip. Humor is so important in our world, especially when talking about subjects like this. Please roll the clip.
Can I get you a soda somewhere?
Oh, sure, that'd be great. The thing is, Hitler really ruined that mustache for everybody, because it's an interesting mustache, and now nobody could wear it. Oh, thanks. Oh, Jesus Christ! What the hell?
What?
Did you shake that up on purpose?
Parkinson's.
Well, that'll lighten the mood.
Yeah.
All right. Today, let's jump in. My guest today, Alyce Levy, mom, wife, aunt, sister, sister-in-law, daughter, granddaughter, artist, and the strongest woman I know living with MS. In full disclosure, she's also a relative of mine, if you didn't notice the Levy connection. And also Dr. Bradley McDaniels, assistant professor, Rehabilitation Studies undergraduate program coordinator, Department of Rehabilitation and Health Services at the University of North Texas.
North Texas, yeah.
That was a mouthful. I'm just going to ask you, who are you and what do you do?
Make it really short, Brian.
Please.
I work at the University of North Texas. I teach students in our graduate program mainly, and I spend a good chunk of my time researching quality of life and Parkinson's disease. How can we make it better?
That was simple.
Yeah,
Appreciate
much
it.
easier.
Yeah. Alyce, first, can you share a little bit about your early signs of your diagnosis? What made you feel like something wasn't right? And how did you know it was time to seek medical advice?
Well, I'd been doing some crazy yoga and I thought, oh, I've pulled something in my back. I began having numbness in my toes and my fingers, and it crawled up to my torso, and it wasn't going away. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And so I decided something really was wrong. I could just tell it wasn't going away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Everyone reacts differently, but for you personally, what emotions surfaced in those first few days and weeks? Was there anything that helped you process that news?
Yeah, there were a lot of things. So the first thing, I went to a doctor, and my mother-in-law had gone, and she had a gut feeling because she had a friend with MS. So she really had a gut feeling, but she hadn't told me, which was very kind. And my husband went, and we went to a doctor, and he said, you have MS. And to me, MS was one of those things you did a run for, a 5K, or, they're always asking money. I had no idea what it was. The doctor didn't explain it. And my first gut feeling was, oh my God, I have to leave my husband. I can't have kids and I'm going to die. And so I was so upset, and we left. Doctor didn't explain it, and we left, and I started reading about it, and particularly got on the National MS Society and realized that it isn't a death sentence.
It is not.
It is not.
You're living proof.
No.
I want to jump in. Dr. McDaniels, we were talking about this for the show.
Yeah.
I want you to address that.
Yeah, that's such a challenge. Just on a personal note, my mom has Parkinson's disease.
Oh,
Thank you. That was what led me to quit a career and go back to graduate school late in life. And when she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, the same thing happened, right? You have Parkinson's. And at that moment, I believe from many people that I've talked to, everything stops.
Yeah.
Your mind just says, oh no, everything in my life is over. And she heard nothing else that doctor said in that moment.
That's exactly accurate.
And so we wrote a paper about a year and a half ago on giving the diagnosis in a compassionate way. And it's so critical for medical professionals to understand the emotional response that people have with something like MS, Parkinson's disease, dementia, Alzheimer's, right? Any of the above, because it's life changing in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's so tough.
Thank you. For
It
sharing.
really was.
Alyce, you've been living with this diagnosis for almost 26 years, which gives you a very unique perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, are there specific things that you did to help you manage your symptoms and overall well-being? And on a flip side, are there things that you tried that maybe didn't work as well?
Well, I'll tell you one thing was I didn't isolate myself. The first night I was diagnosed, a bunch of friends, this is back when you had to print stuff off the internet, came over with stacks of paper and they were like, "You're going to be okay. We're here with you." And I didn't isolate myself. And I began to realize that there were a lot of people who had a lot of things going on. Just mine was more obvious. Mm-hmm. A lot of personal thing. And mine was more obvious. So I would say the number one thing was to not isolate myself. And I definitely got involved with the National MS Society and started a bike team. We've raised almost $3 million.
Called the
Feisty Devils. And it carried me for 20 years. It was the best thing ever. And I also investigated holistic care, medical care, and I went to a therapist to see how I could reduce my stress because I knew that was something that really can trigger an effect. So I tried to cover all the bases. I didn't just choose one. I tried to figure out what worked for me.
Great.
Yeah. Holistic care. I believe we're seeing so much more of that, right? Mm-hmm. And I was talking with Brian before about this shift from the medical paradigm to a holistic wellness paradigm. And, I think finding those other things, and it's not the same for everyone, right, is the interesting thing, right? There's not one path. And to find your path is critical.
Absolutely.
Great. Alyce, for someone newly diagnosed who may be feeling isolated or struggling to incorporate their diagnosis into their world, into their lives, what words of encouragement, wisdom, or advice would you offer? How can they begin to find a sense of connection and purpose despite the challenges? You talk about isolation. We know what isolation does.
Oh,
so
it's the worst.
Yeah, you get in your head.
You get in your head, and I easily could have, and I remember several people in my family who'd had various diagnoses of things and chosen to really isolate. So that was something I didn't want to do. There's so many resources. I didn't get in a lot of self-help groups because I was concerned about commiseration. Mm. I talked to my friends and I learned that everybody has something.
Yeah.
It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not how far you fall. It's how quickly you get up.
That's great. How much time, if any, did you spend on WebMD? I guess 26 years ago.
No, not much. Right? That's another thing, trolling, because there are a lot of people saying a lot of things.
Right.
And it doesn't help. You find an organization, like I found the MS Society, stick with them, stick with good information like North Texas, and then what you're getting is the real thing.
Yeah. I'm curious, how long did it take you post-diagnosis before you wanted to engage?
I'm maybe a little different, but I engaged the next day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I had also...
She's somewhat of an extrovert. If you
I picked up.
But
takes one to know one.
Yeah. And I don't know where I got the idea that I needed to tell my body I wanted to be chasing my great grandchildren around.
Yeah.
And so the way for me to do that was to do things to tell my body that was what was important. So I continued exercising, even probably more regularly. I started eating more respectfully of my body and tried to say to, thank you for what you've given me. And I'd continue to have this.
Yeah.
Great. Doctor, let's talk about wellness and its impact on the quality of life. In your experience, how does focusing on overall well-being influence health outcomes for people living with neurodegenerative diagnoses? And can you share any specific do's or don'ts?
Yeah. Wellness is critical. We've begun to see this shift, and I mentioned it a minute ago, away from the medical paradigm to a wellness paradigm. The medical paradigm focuses on what's wrong, and it focuses on a diagnosis, and it focuses on treatment after the fact. Wellness focuses on prevention. Mm-hmm. Wellness focuses on thriving despite my struggle. And it's some of the things, at least, that you talked about. It's exercise, it's diet, it's these types of things that we need to do, because we don't live in a vacuum, and we don't just have our diagnosis. We are people who happen to have a given diagnosis,
Right.
MSPD. And the more that we can keep our bodies, our minds engaged, the better our disease process is.
Thank you.
Great.
Beyond the physical symptoms, are there also non-motor features that can significantly impact their lives? What are some of those lesser known effects, and how do they shape the overall experience of the diagnosis?
Yeah. It particularly in my research with Parkinson's, we spend so much more time talking about the non-motor features, because those are the things that affect quality of life, right? Incontinence, fatigue, sleep problems, GI disturbances. And we'll talk about the mental health stuff in a little while, but those are the things that when I talk to people who have chronic neurologic conditions tell me that's what's affecting my quality of life. We have meds that are fairly effective to treat some of the symptoms that are associated with these diseases, but that's not the issue, right? It's connection. It's getting with people. It's stigma, these types of things that are problematic.
Thank you. What are some factors that can lead to poor outcomes? Things like stigma, loneliness, depression, or even apathy. How have you seen these challenges affect people, and what can they do to counteract them?
Yeah. And Alyce mentioned the connecting with other people. One of the struggles, I believe, with people, particularly with neurodegenerative conditions, is stigma that's associated with a visible symptom of the disease.
Yeah.
You have fatigue, and you feel like if you go out and you engage with your community, you can't do what you used to do. So you feel like people might judge you. You might have a tremor. You might walk differently. And so therefore you don't engage, right? Depression is common, loneliness, right? All of these things create a situation where we withdraw and we get by ourselves, and then loneliness sets in. And the sequelae of loneliness are really significant for what they do to our lives. The health benefits of social connection are tremendous. Mm-hmm. And I think we didn't see it as much pre-COVID. Since COVID, there's been so much study on loneliness. We've written a couple of papers on it, and we realize that it's essential for all of us to be connected before we have a condition, but certainly after, to feel like we're part of a community.
Yeah. Thank you. It's not just the person with the neurodegenerative diagnosis who is affected. Care partners and loved ones experience these challenges as well. What are some of the biggest struggles for caregivers and family, and how can they best support both their loved one and their neurodegenerative diagnosis themselves?
Yeah. And I think the care partner or caregiver role is largely neglected in the community. In research, we talk about the person who's been diagnosed, but what about role changes that happen in the home, right? Somebody may be the primary breadwinner, and all of a sudden now they're not. Mm-hmm. And someone else needs to pick up that role, right? And they're not prepared for that. They weren't anticipating that. And so now all of a sudden you've got your own stress. You've got reactive depression, potentially some loneliness because you can't engage in life the way that you used to, because now you're having to take care. Let me rephrase that. You're getting to take care of your loved one, right? Because so much of it is how we look at our problems. It's the way that the cognitive shift that we use to deal with the challenges that life gives us. But I think for every problem that we see, for the person who's got the diagnosis, those same issues, minus what the meds do, right? Minus the motor symptoms, they experience the same stuff. Stress, depression, anxiety, loneliness, stigma. All of those things are common. We just typically don't address it, and the doctors don't ask.
Right.
The doctor probably, if your husband goes with you to the doctor, I would bet the doctor has never said, what's your husband's name?
Doug.
I'll bet he's never said, Doug, how are you doing with this?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's such a missed thing, because we can't pour from an empty cup. If I'm taking care of you, I'm helping you, and I'm not good, you're not good. because I can't give that to you.
That's right.
So it's so critical for the care partner to have self-care, do the things they need to do, have a respite. If it's a day a week, an evening a week, I have my friends. I need to do these things that keep me well so that I can be everything that I need to be for you.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment
Please
about
add
that?
to that.
And that was one of my biggest fears because Doug would do anything for me all day long, but I never wanted him or our kids, our daughters, to have to ever take care of me like that. And that's a fear. But there is shame in that, worrying that you married this person and, oh, all of a sudden, by the way, you're going to have to take care of me. So I think what you're saying about addressing that with the caregivers is so right on and would affect everyone in a positive way.
Guilt is a real issue.
Oh,
it happens.
And shame. And a lot with these, I have a couple of friends who have MS whose parents said, don't tell anybody. And I was like, I'm nearsighted. Should I not tell anybody? Yeah. I had asthma as a kid. Should I not tell anybody? I'm kind of short. Should I not tell anyone? Yeah. I mean, it's a thing. It's what you do with it.
Yeah. And in conversations that I've had in different talks that I've given, when I talk to the care partner group, they feel guilty about taking that time to go have dinner with a friend because they're leaving their loved one at home.
Right. But self-care is so important for both of the spouses. It's interesting in the older generation where they take those vows so literally. I'm here and I've made this commitment, and we find time and time again that one of the spouse that's been diagnosed relies on their spouse for so many things for so many years that caregiver fatigue is real. And I saw it recently with a couple who he just wore himself out. She had the diagnosis and he died just out of exhaustion.
Sure.
So it's so real. I feel like it's our duty to expose it and to make it better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that one of my research areas is meaning in life and finding purpose. Mm-hmm. So often as someone as a family progresses with a chronic condition, purpose gets lost. This was my purpose in life. My purpose was my work, taking care of my kids. Now, all of a sudden, I've had to shift because of this illness, and I've lost that purpose, and I feel lost. I don't have the meaning in my life that I used to have. And then depression sets in, demoralization, which we can talk about is a whole nother issue. Right. And so it's about how do I find purpose again, despite what's going on?
Let's move on to mental health. Mental health can be a huge hurdle for those living with a chronic condition. Depression, anxiety, apathy, and the demoralization can creep in. How do you see the challenges affecting people with neurodegenerative diagnoses? I want both of y'all to answer this.
Yeah. You want to start and then I'll kick in?
Hit it.
Well, I mean, as you know, fatigue has been my biggest symptom. And I am a person who likes to appear very strong. I don't like to show any chinks in my armor, but there are a lot of times when I call my friends and I say, I'm sorry, I can't go out tonight. Mm-hmm. And they've learned that's just what I have to do to take care of myself.
But don't you find that those are your true friends? I mean, so many times that I come to the house and where's Alyce? She's napping, hold it down. Right. And it's not, oh, she's being lazy or, oh, she doesn't see you. She's worn out. And so if someone doesn't understand that, you know what? They're not your person.
They're not.
Right. But those who don't know you that just think, oh, it's 2:00 in the afternoon on a Tuesday and she's napping. What the heck?
I don't need them.
You don't need them.
I don't need those people. Right. I don't have those friends.
Judge me not.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's fatigue is huge with any of them. And I think what can happen with fatigue and missing out is then I begin to feel depressed because I'm not able to engage. So Brian, you mentioned depression, apathy, anxiety, demoralization, these things in 50% of people with neurologic conditions, they have depression, anxiety, and apathy. Super common. And one of the things that we just submitted a paper a week ago on this idea of demoralization. Mm-hmm. It's talked about in the cancer literature, and it's this thing that a geriatric psychiatrist who I work with, called me up and he said, we need to talk about this in Parkinson's. And it's this idea of loss of hope, feeling helpless, loss of meaning. And it's truly the inability to cope with my life as it's happening.
Right.
And it's different than depression because it won't respond to depression meds, SSRIs or SNRIs. So it's a behavioral intervention. It's a discussion that doctors need to be aware of to be able to have with their patients, but it's significant.
Well, like Alyce said, I think one of the best ways to offset that struggle is just to have the right people in your life. Surround yourself with the people that support you and that understand you,
Right.
and let the rest go.
And have their own imperfect lives or things they're dealing with
Right.
in their own lives.
Right. Wow. Dr. McDaniels, what haven't I asked you that I should?
I think one of the things that, and Alyce, you've hit on it multiple times, is this idea of social connection. It is such a critical component. We've written about social prescribing, which is an interesting idea that doctors prescribe medications. Should they not also prescribe getting out into the community, connecting with like-minded people, right? The value of social connect. In fact, let me rephrase this. Loneliness is worse for your health than obesity, alcoholism, and smoking.
Wow.
The data shows this. So we need to, as a community, make sure that as we age, that we stay socially connected and find my tribe. Who are my people that, like you said, Brian, the people whom I can talk to and be honest with? That's so critical for our mental health, for our physical health, so that we engage and we do the things that we need to do from a wellness perspective. We invite other people to be involved.
Right. Community.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Alyce, what haven't I asked you that I should, other than the fact that you're not kind of short? You are short. You said kind of, but you are short. What haven't I asked you that I should?
One thing that's really important is to know your worth.
Mm.
I knew I had things to fight for. I knew I wanted this. This was the life I was entitled to, and I wasn't going to have any less.
You have bigger plans.
I had bigger plans, and I think you have to have future plans.
Don't you find that it's all mindset? It's the
Yeah.
attitude.
True.
Yeah.
I've been lucky, so I don't know. But on the other hand, I will not accept any less.
Amen. Wow. Deep. Let's move on to the nugget portion of this program. I love cartoons. If you would show this one, I'm having such a good time. I feel like we're in the pharmaceutical ad. Isn't that the truth? God bless Medication Nation. All right. My soapbox. Let's move on to the lightning round. This is an opportunity for people to get to know you guys personally, as if we haven't already. Lightning round, quick. I'm going to start with you and move to you.
All right.
Ready? Round robin. Where were you born and raised?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Alyce.
No way. My daughter goes to Michigan.
Where were you born and raised?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
College and degree.
University of Kentucky, PhD.
Alyce.
University of Kansas, psychology and philosophy, and an associate's in graphic design.
Wow. First concert.
Prince.
That's so cool.
Alyce, first concert.
Sean Cassidy.
Wow. Worst modern invention.
The cell phone.
I agree.
Cell phone. Are you still in touch with childhood friends?
Some.
Alyce?
Yep.
Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Mountains.
There you go. Silliest fear.
Failing.
Someone putting fruit in my food.
Favorite movie?
Ooh. Shawshank Redemption.
Good one.
Pulp Fiction or Dead Poet Society, one of those.
Can you change a tire?
Yes.
No.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
iPhone.
Are you sentimental?
No.
Yes.
Karaoke.
No.
No.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, don't yell at me. Window or aisle?
Aisle.
Aisle.
Do you believe in aliens?
No.
Not really.
All right. Good to know you. All right. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank
I
you so
appreciate you
much.
sharing your personal
Thank
stories.
you.
I know that's a lot to ask, and that's very helpful. And I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
you. If you would like to see this episode or any past episodes, you can dial us up on manchesterlivingpodcast.com, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and wherever else you get your social media. I don't even know all the different platforms, but in closing, if there's anything I can ever do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'm going to put up Dr. McDaniels' contact information. So if you want the expertise, you can reach out to him directly. Thanks for watching today.